Ukraine's $5.8 billion drone swarm cripples Russia's tank industry. Epic 6-hour strike.
At 3:47 a.m., an 11-pound drone hurtled like a bolt of lightning at 68 miles per hour toward UralVagonZavod's metallurgical tower, the heart of Russia's tank industry. It missed its target by 30 feet, but 58 other Ukrainian drones hit it. And a corner of Russia's largest tank industrial complex erupted like a volcano. There were only 3 seconds left before impact. There was no margin for error. And that was the end of a 6-hour hunt, a hunt that had begun at 9 p.m. the night before, when the Urals were still in darkness. 10 Bober motherships launched from hidden locations in the Ural forest. 9,000 feet above them, a Ukrospec Systems Shark hovered silently on the edge of Nizhny Tagil airspace, scanning the entire Russian air defense line and transmitting real-time data to Ukrainian control centers. Each mothership was a miniature aircraft carrier, carrying 4 FPV-1 Killer's electronic wolfpacks programmed to attack as a unified entity. In the first fatal blow, the 4 motherships were tasked with ramming UralVagonZavod's heavy metal alloy and distillation facility, which played a vital role in the manufacture of T-90M tank armor and chassis. Their mission: to travel more than 640 miles along the Tagil River, flying just 17 meters above the surface, a suicidal journey, where a half-second wrong tilt of the wings could send the drone plunging into the coal-black water and ending the entire operation. For 6 hours, they drifted like nameless shadows. Then, at 3:30 a.m., the silence was shattered. A Russian Pantsir-S1 operator nearly jumped out of his chair. His once black radar screen flashed, displaying 4 faint, ghostly signals. "4 targets, extremely low altitude," he shouted into his headset. The anti-aircraft monster had awoken. 3 Pantsir systems, the last line of defense protecting the $1.1 billion industrial facility, began rotating their heavy turrets, the hydraulics hissing through the cold pre-dawn night. And at that moment, Ukraine's carefully calculated plan turned to cold-blooded genius. At 3:40 a.m., the Russian controllers locked on precisely. 4 signals, 4 easy targets to shoot down. But the Ukrainian AI, through its thermally sensitive eyes, saw what the Russians completely missed: a real flock of wild geese flying across the sky above the industrial zone. And the AI made a decision that was almost playing God. It ordered the formation to split. On the ground, a desperate Russian crew launched a Zala Lancet to pursue the FPV-1 formation. But it took the Ukrainian AI only 0.3 seconds to recognize the Lancet's guidance signal, diverting the 3 drones to a jammed trajectory that sent the Lancet into the radar blind zone and lost its lock. The 3 Bobers immediately changed direction, flying in a chaotic manner, narrowing the reflected signal to simulate the movement of real birds. At the same time, the 4th turned the full power of its transmitter not on the Russian radar, but on the flock of geese themselves. It turned the flock of birds into a giant screaming ghost on the Russian radar screen, an image that was no different from a wave of cruise missiles rushing straight at the strategic facility. On the radar screen, that ghost looked no different from a wave of cruise missiles rushing straight at the industrial zone. Imagine the Russian Pantsir operator at that moment. Ahead of him were 3 small bright spots, or a huge ferocious mass of signals, like an iron fist about to strike. Everything he had ever trained in, all his air defense doctrine, and the pounding heart in his chest, all shouted the same thing: "Take out the biggest target first!" And that was the wrong choice. Pantsir missiles whistled through the air. They found their target and exploded only to tear apart a cloud of feathers. In those 12 golden seconds, the entire Russian crew was completely fooled. Their systems locked onto the illusion. Turrets pointed at an empty sky. And in that brief moment born of a genius lie, 4 Bober motherships rushed forward, closing the final distance to the heart of the UralVagonZavod complex. The surviving FPVs engaged vectoring a real-time bullet avoidance algorithm that automatically bent microseconds whenever the sensors detected a Pantsir cannon blast. 3:45 a.m., the storm truly exploded. The 4 motherships opened their bellies, releasing their entire arsenal. 16 FPV drones swooped down like a flock of vengeful birds, heading straight for the heart of the UVZ's heavy metallurgy. The Pantsir crews, barely recovering from the shock, were thrown into chaos. They fired their cannons in desperation, turning the sky into a web of interwoven steel. The defense was brutal. 12 of the 16 FPVs were torn apart. their red-hot fragments falling into the pools of molten metal and causing secondary fires as large as small volcanoes. Russia has destroyed the majority of the drone swarm, but majority is never enough in war. The lead Pantsir is focusing all its capabilities on dealing with the fake targets, locking its best bullets on the illusions created by the Ukrainian AI. In the moment it loses its bearings, a perfect opening opens up for the surviving drones. 3:47 a.m. As Russian artillery fired hopelessly into the sky, the last 4 FPVs from Mothership 4 escaped the barrage and dove for their targets. But Ukraine paid the price. Mothership 4, having released all its drones, could not return like the other 3. It nosed down, turning itself into a suicide bomb. It followed its 4 children closely, forming a decisive 5-pronged coordinated attack. 4 FPVs and the mothership itself crashed into the metallurgical towers and the central control room of the factory. 4 hits shattered the heavy metal distillation column. The 5th hit penetrated the control room, which operated the entire production line of armor and tank chassis. $1.4 billion worth of Russian military industry burned, turning into a monument to defeat right in the holy land of armored vehicle manufacturing in Moscow. From the drone's perspective, the last signal sent back was a cold statement.
Target confirmed. Lock 3, 2, 1. Impact.
Maxar satellite images captured the exact moment the metallurgical column exploded a bright red point of light in the dark Urals. What happened at UVZ was more than an attack, it was a perfect strategic smokescreen. While Russian generals were screaming on the phone, trying to save the Nizhny Tagil complex from the flames, the Wolfpack's 6 remaining Bober motherships were silently sliding through the night sky. They were heading for their next targets. Bryansk, Tula, Ufa, and Nizhny Novgorod, each a key link in the Russian defense industrial chain. The real attack was just beginning. Over the jammed radio screens, Russian lookouts heard only one phrase repeated:
Unknown. Too many targets.
63 miles to the east, the first Shark handed over data to Shark number 2, which took over the monitoring of the remaining 6 motherships' flight paths toward Bryansk, Tula, Ufa, and Nizhny Novgorod. The real storm wasn't over yet. What had just happened at UralVagonZavod was just the appetizer. The next target lay behind an invisible wall of pure electronic warfare power. At 4:15 a.m., 3 of the 6 remaining Bober motherships, after traveling hundreds of miles south, approached the Ufa military fuel complex, which produces jet fuel for the Russian Air Force. This was the lifeblood of Moscow's entire Air Force, and Russia knew it. From a distance of more than 24 kilometers, 2 motherships opened their compartments, releasing 8 killer FPV drones. The 3rd mothership, Bober number 8, did not release anything. It hovered at high altitude because its role was more important than carrying drones. Russian defenses in Ufa were on red alert. At 4:25 a.m., the Krasukha 4 electronic warfare system turned on, flooding the entire area with a sea of GPS interference and invisible wall that blocked all air navigation devices. NASA firm's data recorded an unusual thermal oscillation zone at the exact moment the Krasukha 4 was pumping out full power jamming. At the same time, nearly 140 kilometers away from Ufa, a Ukrainian Bukovel AD station switched on electronic decoy mode, pumping into space a series of signals with the same structure as the FPV, forcing the Krasukha to share the processing load, creating small interference gaps to real drones clinging to it. In an instant, all 8 Ukrainian FPVs were completely disoriented. A single Pantsir battery defending the plant opened fire, shooting down 3 disoriented drones in the first 10 seconds. In the rear, another Russian crew quickly launched a Zala Lancet to block a potential escape route, but the Lancet immediately sank into the Bukovel AD's jamming zone and lost control. In theory, the attack was a failure. For the Russians, it was a perfect defensive situation. They had blinded the FPVs, destroyed multiple targets, kept the fuel plant safe, but the Ukrainian AI had predicted this all along. At 4:30 a.m., while the swarm of FPVs was locked on by electronic jamming, Bober number 8 began to act. It dived sharply, not towards the plant, but straight into the battery Pantsir on the ground. On the Pantsir radar, the image that appeared was no longer a small plastic drone. It looked like a large, high-speed, maximum threat target hurtling straight at them. The Pantsir operator was faced with an immediate life or death situation. He had no choice but to rotate the turret, lock on, and fire 2 interceptor missiles. In the Pantsir cockpit, biometric sensors recorded the crew's heart rate skyrocketing, a clear sign of red-level panic. But this wasn't just a desperate dive. It was a synchronized sacrifice, programmed to the exact second. As soon as the Pantsir launched 2 missiles at Bober 8, Bober 9, the second mothership, also dove hard, turning itself into an impossible target. Now the Pantsir was faced with 2 direct threats at once, and it was forced to do the only thing it could: fire its last 2 missiles, one at each mothership. There was no last-minute magic, no miracle escape. At 4:36 a.m., Bober 8 and Bober 9 were ripped from the sky in 2 separate fireballs. The Ukrainian SIGINT station in Kharkiv confirmed that the 2 Pantsir emitters disappeared simultaneously, clear evidence that the trap had been set at the right time. A costly sacrifice, but absolutely necessary. Their last move was to buy time, and they bought exactly 12 seconds. In those 12 seconds, the Pantsir battery was completely locked, tracking the target, firing continuously, and confirming the kill, leaving it incapable of observing or reacting to anything else. The Pantsir turret was still pointed skyward. Its operator was still dazzled by 2 consecutive victories. But it was in that vulnerable moment that the surviving FPVs began their final approach. They used Kraska's jamming signal as a reverse beacon to navigate, then flew the last half-mile using only inertia, raw sensors, and memory. The Russian electronic warfare crew believed they had won. What they didn't know was that at that moment, the Bukovel AD system was re-establishing micropaths between the remaining FPVs, allowing them to see a safe trajectory through Krasuka 4's jamming layer. The Pantsir crew was jubilantly celebrating 2 perfect kills. They didn't see the 5 small, silent assassins sneaking out of the chaos. Just a minute later, the price of their sacrifice was paid in full. 2 FPVs crashed into the main alloy furnace, where high-strength steel for tank armor was processed. The Shark UAV recorded the furnace temperature soaring above 900 degrees Celsius just before the entire structure exploded. The 3rd FPV blew out the molten metal circulation pump assembly, turning the entire system into a pile of red-hot, twisted steel. The last 2 FPVs, damaged by the shockwave from the Pantsir missiles, wobbled and fell without causing further damage. But the damage was done. 2 motherships and the entire FPV were lost a huge price. But in return, $2.3 billion in strategic assets and the entire metallurgical chain for the production of Russian tank chassis, axles, and road wheels disappeared in the blink of an eye. Strategically, this was a worthy trade-off. The 2 sacrifices at Ufa brought a victory at the campaign level, and more importantly, a completely new wave of panic in the Russian army. Russia's response was a chaotic and desperate shuffle of assets. Convinced that the greatest threat was still directed at its industrial centers, Russia began withdrawing its most advanced short-range air defense systems from the front lines, pulling them back to protect its domestic infrastructure. One of the systems deployed was the TOR-M2, the SA-15 Gauntlet Beast, specialized in hunting down drones and missiles at close range, and it was waiting for the next strike. This is Russia's top drone killer, the TOR-M2 system, and a battery of it, waiting for the final blow from Ukraine. The sky over the southern Urals has now turned into an air defense fortress, with radar networks overlapping like electronic armor. More than 22 kilometers away, an auxiliary radar of the S-350 system tries to pick up the target signal, but is hit by a false echo zone from the Shark overhead, forcing the entire air defense cluster to turn its radar tower in the wrong direction. Flying into it is almost suicidal. At 5 a.m., 2 of the 3 remaining Bober motherships fly in a tight formation, preparing for the final blow. Their target, the Nizhny Tagil industrial substation, the power supply center for the entire UralVagonZavod and the surrounding industrial zone. From a distance of 10 miles, they opened the hatch and dropped the entire payload 8 killer FPV drones. The Russians were ready. At 5:10 a.m., the TOR-M2 crew stationed half a mile from the substation received exactly the kind of lock they had been waiting for. 8 signals slow-low coming in. This was exactly the kind of situation the TOR-M2 was created to destroy. The controller calmly reported,
Lock on 8 targets! Attack!
2 9M331 missiles were launched in quick succession. The first exploded, engulfing 2 FPVs in a fiery ball of fire. The second destroyed the third. The swarm of Ukrainian UAVs was being crushed with the cold efficiency of a killing machine. But the Ukrainian AI had studied the TOR-M2 in every detail. It understood the fatal weakness all too well. The TOR-M2 was completely dependent on a single engagement radar. The 5 remaining FPVs immediately deployed countermeasures. 2 suddenly broke formation, increased altitude, and emitted a blinding electronic signal, hitting the TOR's radar dish. TOR's automated system designed to prioritize the most aggressive threats was immediately fooled. The radar swiveled skyward, focused entirely on the 2 sources of interference, seeing no movement on the ground. While TOR stared at the sky, trying to penetrate the electronic glare, the automated system continued to operate as programmed. It launched 2 more missiles, destroying the 2 decoy FPVs. But in that gap, the remaining 3 FPVs, completely invisible to the radar blind spot, made their final dash without any resistance. When the TOR reported "destroy target," the operator realized he had made a fatal mistake. He rotated the radar to relock on the target, but with a 4-second rotation cycle, he had no time to correct it. At 5:15 a.m., the final price had been paid. The remaining 3 FPVs hit the substation. One went straight into the central switchgear. The other 2 severed the main high-voltage transmission line. A huge blue flash lit up the pre-dawn sky. The firm system recorded a hotspot the size of a stadium just seconds after the explosion. Then, immediately, the entire area was plunged into absolute darkness. 18,000 apartments in Nizhny Tagil and, more importantly, the military rail transport hub of the Southern Front were completely cut off from electricity. In Moscow, Putin must be lighting candles and reminiscing about the good old days when his national power grid was still running smoothly. The 2 motherships that had just carried out the attack did not stay to observe the results. After completing their mission, they tilted their wings and disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness. Their work was done. But the night was not over yet. At 5:30 a.m., the last Bauber mothership, the only one flying the northern route, approached the Ufa rail interchange, right in the industrial heart of central Russia. This was the center for coordinating all military transport between Ufa, Chelyabinsk, Luhansk. Destroy it. And it would be more than just a blockage. It would be a complete cutoff of a strategic route that fed Russia's southern front. From a distance of 12 miles, Bauber finally released the 4 remaining FPVs. The TOR-M2 system protecting the railway immediately identified the 4 small signals. The Russian crew who had fought on the front did not hesitate. 2 missiles were launched. 2 FPVs were torn apart immediately. The radar began the classic TOR 4-second rotation to find the 2 remaining targets again. But the Ukrainian AI had another trump card. Not a decoy, not a jam, but a pure psychological attack. While the radar was rotating, one of the 2 surviving FPVs emitted a tiny encrypted radio signal. It was not aimed at the radar. It was aimed directly at the TOR-M2's internal diagnostic frequency. The signal contained a false error code, Cascade 3B. The message flashed red on the commander's dashboard in the cockpit. For the Russian crew, it was an "oh no" moment. A missile launch error in the middle of a battle was a tactical disaster. Following their training, they bent over the controls, taking 3 precious seconds to check. Only 3 seconds, but they had turned their backs on the sky. And it's the oldest trick in the playbook. While the guard looks down, the thief sneaks past. By the time they realize the error code is just a ghost, it's too late. The radar completes its rotation, but the sky is empty. They've lost their only chance to stop it. At 5:38 a.m., the 2 remaining FPVs fly past. One crashes straight into the central switching tower, turning the entire network of rails cable signals into a pile of scorched scrap. The last FPV, having completed its primary mission, proceeded to crash into an ammunition train awaiting transport to the front. The explosion created a huge fireball, blew apart the first 7 ammunition cars, and then set off secondary explosions that spread along the remaining explosive cars. Seismic sensors in Chelyabinsk recorded a shockwave equivalent to the explosion of 12 tons of TNT. The entire city of Ufa shook. The shockwave was so strong that it was felt as far away as occupied Luhansk. It was the final domino to fall, capping a night that paralyzed the entire Russian military transport system. Let's go back to the decisive moment of this entire 6-hour campaign. At 3:47 a.m., FPV-1 and its mothership Bauber No. 4 crashed directly into the UralVagonZavod's metallurgical tower. Why was that hit the fatal shot? Because the Russians were lazy. They were doing repairs overnight, which meant ignoring safety procedures, letting down guard, and exposing a vulnerability at the heart of their tank industry. That single pinpoint strike didn't just destroy a piece of equipment, it went straight to the heart of Russia's defense industry, which was supposed to be running 24/7 to keep the war going. From that spark, a $5.8 billion chain reaction began to spread. Look at the actual total damage. UralVagonZavod, Russia's largest tank factory, lost 50% of its alloy smelting capacity. T-90M and T-72B3 lines lost 35% of their capacity, unable to make up for the tanks being destroyed on the battlefield. Bryansk lost its ability to produce optics and gun control systems. Tula's armor press was paralyzed, causing a severe shortage of turret armor, forcing production to stop for at least 18 days. Ufa, already short of 5 million industrial workers, now lost its only strategic rail link to Luhansk. For all that loss, Ukraine only lost 3 motherships and 36 FPVs. For less than $1.2 million, Russia lost the ability to keep up production of tank frames, turrets, and reactive armor, the core components that keep the battlefield alive. But the real victory is not in numbers. The real victory is the fear that spreads throughout the Russian industrial chain. The panic forced Russia to withdraw 10 Pantsir and TOR-M2 systems from the front lines to protect smoldering factories, and each system they withdraw from the battlefield is a new hole for HIMARS, ATACMS, and Storm Shadow to penetrate. The lesson here is dire. It's not Ukrainian artillery that's attacking Russia, it's the Russian industrial system itself that's collapsing under the pressure of cheap drones. You can build a $500 million air defense shield, but it's useless if the enemy is smart enough to throw an $8,000 weapon at it at the right time and place. Ukraine isn't just fighting harder, it's fighting smarter, sharper, more agile. This is the new face of war, and Russia is learning it with every steel mill, every tank line, every burning substation. Ukraine doesn't attack with metal, it attacks with data, timing, and absolute precision. So here's the real question. If you were the Russian defense minister, waking up from this $5.8 billion nightmare, what would you do to protect an industrial chain that's rotting from the ground up? How would you defend against a mothership drone that could hit any of your factories at any time? Leave your strategic ideas in the comments. I'll read them and maybe analyze the best ones in the next video. If you believe that Ukraine's innovation is reshaping the entire modern warfare, please hit like and subscribe to see more analysis of the smart tactics that are changing the battlefield. See you in the next video.